Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and welcome to the race reaction for the 2020 Russian Grand Prix after qualifying yesterday, which was quite exciting and set us up with quite an interesting grid. We got, considering it's a Russian Grand Prix around this track, the Sochi track, it was quite good. It was quite a good race. I enjoyed it. I'd say it was a 6 or a 7 out of 10. I know that might sound blasphemous to certain people, but again, considering this track and its characteristics, I thought we got a pretty good race. Great overtaking, very exciting start, and even three-way battles at two separate occasions in the Grand Prix. So yeah, for a Russian Grand Prix, it was pretty good, I thought. And we're now going to get into why exactly it was, in my opinion, a pretty good Grand Prix and how everyone did in the Russian Grand Prix. So, if you don't know the results, then here they are. So Valtteri Bottas takes his second win here at the Russian Grand Prix. Max Verstappen second, Lewis Hamilton third. We will get into in a moment why Lewis Hamilton finished third and not first, where he was most likely going to finish. Then Sergio Perez, great drive to P4. Daniel Ricciardo P5, Charles Leclerc P6, great drive from Leclerc. Ocon P7, Kvyat P8, Gasly P9, Albon P10. We'll get on to why Albon, just didn't have a good race today in terms of where he positioned on track and all of that. And then Antonio Giovinazzi P11, Magnussen P12, Vettel 13th, Raikkonen 14th, Norris 15th, and then Latifi, Grosjean, and Russell complete the rest of the field that finished the race, and then retiring on the first lap, Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll in the Racing Point. And that order, really, considering what the starting order was, I think it does kind of show you that we did have, again, considering the track we raced at, an eventful Grand Prix in certain parts of the order. So, first, let's of course get on to our race winner, Valtteri Bottas, and Bottas did not really have to do anything at all. He obviously started third, got past Max Verstappen straight away because Max had quite a poor start compared to Valtteri. Then Valtteri got straight away in the slipstream of his teammate Lewis Hamilton, almost went right round the outside at turn 2 and into turn 3 and got the lead, but locked up, went slightly too wide, and Hamilton kept the position. But when Lewis Hamilton made his one and only pit stop, because Lewis Hamilton had to serve his 10-second penalty, which we'll get into in a moment about, why he had a 10-second penalty and how it affected his race. Because of that, and because of the amount of time Lewis Hamilton lost, which was about 35-40 seconds, that's why Valtteri won the Grand Prix. Now, if Lewis didn't have the penalty, would Valtteri have won? Probably not. But considering what happened to Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri did his job. He capitalised on Lewis Hamilton's, I wouldn't say misfortune, but, he capitalised on what happened to him, which is something he didn't do, for example, at the Italian Grand Prix, where at that Grand Prix, he should have done what he did today, which is maximise the pain if he was going to still be in that title race with Lewis Hamilton. I still don't think Valtteri Bottas is really in the title race, because it seems as though the only way Lewis Hamilton loses is if he beats himself. Now, getting into Lewis Hamilton, qualifying was eventful enough, just getting pole position and getting through to Q3. The race, though, really, in terms of him getting a race win, it was over before the race even started, wasn't it? So, was it about half an hour or 45 minutes before the race starts? As we all know, if you watch the build-up to a Grand Prix, the cars come out of the pits. They do, a lap around the track just to make sure everything's working, and then they'll come back in maybe to do a practice start. Now, you are allowed to do practice starts, but you're only allowed to do them at certain parts of the pit lane or the track. The reason Lewis Hamilton got 2 5-second penalties was because he had 2, I think, practice starts from 2 positions in the pit lane or track that he wasn't supposed to do them. So I think he did 1 practice start in the fast lane of the pit lane, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to do them, I think, to the other side, kind of where, you know, the pits are, where the actual pit stop areas are. But yeah, he did it in the fast lane, I believe, which is not allowed. That was 1 5-second penalty. And then he did a practice start, I believe, at the pit exit, which is also not allowed, according to, I think, the race director's notes for this Grand Prix. And he got 10-second penalty. It was, you know, clear and obvious. He absolutely deserved to get the penalty. Now, who was at fault for why he did that and got the penalty? I don't really know. The team, to be honest, should know that rule, and I think they do know it a lot more so than Lewis Hamilton does. But with Hamilton doing what he did, I mean, could they really have foreseen that Lewis Hamilton was going to do that? Because, I mean, it's a rule you don't really see being applied, because 99.9% of the time people abide by that rule. So I don't really know who to blame. You can't, I mean, again, Mercedes, they should know the rule because it's their job. You know, certain parts of their team, it's their job to know the rules. But because, again, that rule is so rarely applied, you know, they didn't really see that coming until really Lewis Hamilton did what he did, until he committed, I guess, the crime. And for Lewis Hamilton, I think the pit exit one, he definitely is guilty of, because, I mean, I think considering how long he's been in F1, he probably should know by now that you are not allowed to do certain things on certain parts of the track in the build up to the race, you know, formation laps and all of that. For example, you're not allowed to do a practice start away from the grid on the formation lap. That rule has been around 20 years, I think. So it's hard to say who's at fault exactly, but in terms of did he deserve the penalty? Of course he did. And I even heard from Nib whilst I was watching the race that Lewis was going on about how, you know, anything to slow us down and all of that, and that's just complete rubbish. And I think he was just saying that in the heat of the moment. I think when he looks back at that, he'll realise that, yeah, I broke the rules. I got the punishment that was deserved. Yeah, there's nothing you can really say about it. He broke the rules. He got the punishment. At least the FIA actually punished him, because maybe in the past they would have not punished him at all, or maybe not even punished him as much as they actually did. So obviously when he came to his pit stop, he was stuck in the pits an extra 10 seconds. Didn't really come out in traffic. I mean, he did come out behind Vettel and passed him easily, but after that he was really just on his own. And then came home to third place, in a very boring third place, because he had to just look after his tyres. He couldn't push after Max Verstappen at all in the remaining laps. And also was on a lot older tyres once Max and Valtteri pitted with the same hard compound tyre. So that's how it went for Lewis Hamilton. And as I said a moment ago, it seems as though the only way Lewis Hamilton can lose is if he beats himself. So yeah, for Valtteri Bottas, he's going to have to hope that more of these kind of surprising, ridiculous things happen if he's going to actually close the gap. Because if Lewis, you know, is having a normal weekend, he's going to beat Valtteri Bottas, especially with the next Grand Prix we're going to at the Nürburgring. So, yeah, great for Valtteri, but I feel as though it's only a one... how do I describe what I'm trying to say? This is just one moment. This is not, a complete swing in the title race at all. It's just one moment where Valtteri Bottas capitalizes on a rare slip-up from his team, I guess, and Lewis Hamilton. But, as you can see on the driver's standings on the bottom ticker, Lewis Hamilton is leading the championship by 44 points. So even though Valtteri beat him today, Lewis still has a comfortable gap in hand. But guys, before I get on to Red Bull, just let me know in the chat real quick. What did you think of the whole penalty? Who would you say is at fault? mostly. I don't really know who to say, to be honest, because again, you're not really expecting that to happen. Yeah, let me know in the chat, who do you think was at fault for that, and guess what you thought of Valtteri Bottas and the team's race. Let's have a look. Let's have a quick look here. Bono is definitely at fault, according to Batboo. Hard to say. Hard to say. Bono said it was fine. That's the thing. Was Bono? Did Bono know? Did Bono actually? Was he one of the first ones to see it happen, or was he just told what Hamilton did and then thought, "Oh, that's going to be fine"? Again, it's hard to say. You kind of need like a behind-the-scenes look at, you know, the exact timeline of events, I feel, to really understand why it happened and why the team didn't stop it from happening, or Lewis Hamilton didn't stop himself. Daniel says it's whoever has the responsibility to pass the race director's notes to Hamilton. I think is it Ron Meadows? The team manager? I think it's him. I think he's the person who's supposed to be in control of that area. So maybe it's his fault, but again, it's too soon after the race to really decipher what happened in what sequence of events. And I'll admit, I wasn't actually watching the build-up of the Grand Prix, but I was shown the replay during the race of the two practice starts. So I saw the offending material, but I'm unsure myself as to what the actual timeline of events was. Right, let's have a look at a couple more. Let's see if I can. Spider Monkey says, I think Mercedes didn't expect what Lewis wants to do a start. That's the thing. Because it's such a unusual but also rare thing that happened, I kind of give the team slack because that's one of the things you're not looking for, because it happened, it never happens, and people line up and do their correct procedure in the proper way basically every single time, bar again that 0.1%. So yeah. Then Tonka saying Mercedes team screwed rather Lewis again. Well, saying again, if you go back to Monza and that whole fuck up there, I think with that, you could definitely say the team was at fault, because yes, Lewis saw the signal, but that signal is so rarely used. The pit lane being closed, it's so rarely used and hasn't been used in a very long time. Lewis Hamilton is not expecting to see that. I think the last time we had pit lane closed on a regular basis was back in 2008, where they brought in a bullshit rule during the refueling era that if the safety car was out, you could not come in at certain points to refuel under the safety car if the pit lane was closed. So, it's been a long time, and of course Lewis was driving during that time, but it's been so long since we had something like that the team, I think, definitely was at fault for that, because they should have been on top of that. Because, they had the system where they update about investigations and the status of certain parts of the track. Every team is keeping an eye on that, and McLaren, for example, were. They were definitely at fault there, but here, again, it's harder to say, I think. Right, let me find one more comment, and then we'll get to Red Bull. Batboot says, rules are rules. I do believe that 10 seconds is a bit harsh, to be honest. Well, it wasn't 10 seconds, was it? It was 5 seconds for both infractions. That's what it was. If it was 10 seconds for one thing, then yeah, it probably would have been harsh, but it was 5 seconds for both. So it was, I think, a very just punishment. But anyway, moving on from them and their inevitable race win at the next Grand Prix, Nürburgring, which they're going to get. Go on to the next team, Red Bull. Now, Max Verstappen today did the best he could. He did get passed at the start, and again, he didn't have a good start. He got passed by Bottas and got passed briefly by Daniel Ricciardo, and then got right back past him at turn 5, I think it was, down the inside. Very, very important move. If he didn't make that move, he might have been under threat from Hamilton later on, even with Hamilton getting his penalty, because the Renaults in a straight line are very quick. So it was vital again that he made that move. Got up to third, wasn't too far behind the two Mercs, and then once Hamilton, served his penalty, it was going to be second place. Max did close up in the final laps, but that was because Valtteri was taking it easy, so he doesn't suffer a reliability issue or a tyre failure, so he could get the race win. And also Valtteri was in quite a lot of traffic at the time as well, so that's why Max closed up. But really, what Max did was the best he could do. Can't really ask any more of him. That Red Bull should not have been finishing second. It should have been finishing... To be honest, it shouldn't even really be finishing in third, because, look where Albon's been this weekend. That Red Bull has not been as quick as Max has shown it to be. Max is just that good, but also we do know that Albon's car is not the same as Max's, but that doesn't explain the entire gap. But still, Max is that good. He's making this Red Bull car, and has been all season, look a lot better than it actually is. If you put Gasly or Kvyat in the Red Bull alongside Albon, Red Bull would be a midfield team and would be fighting around Racing Point or AlphaTauri or even McLaren. That's where they would be at the moment. So, great drive by Max Verstappen. Now, Alex Albon had a very long up-down race from word go. So at the start, and actually let me get to what the reason he didn't start in P10, which of course is where he qualified, is because he had a gearbox penalty, so he started from 15th. Then at the start, after Carlos Sainz crashed and Lance Stroll had contact with Leclerc and crashed, he then pitted for a set of hard compound tyres, and it looked as though Albon was going to go to the end of the Grand Prix. And then as he was battling away, and it was a great battle between him and Russell and Norris, and slowly he was getting through the field, it looked as though maybe he could have got a point, but then pitted. And it was actually a very smart decision for Albon to pit, because Norris also did the same thing by going onto the hard tyres straight away. But the difference is Norris basically went to the end of the race, and I think pitted the soft tyres, 2 or 3 laps from the end, because there was no chance of Norris scoring points anymore. Albon was on that plan, but smartly, Red Bull switched him over to the medium tyres to go to the end on that, and it did work out because Albon did get P10 back into the points. But this weekend, I just feel again, Alex Albon has showed that he just isn't good enough, I'm afraid. Now again, he isn't being helped. The team strategy at times for him this season has been poor. For example, look at the Spanish Grand Prix. It was very poor there. You can look at, for example, again, like I've said before, Max has a more upgraded Red Bull and has done at points this season. But this weekend, 1.2 seconds off Max in qualifying. Almost lapped by Max Verstappen. He probably would have been if there wasn't a safety car. It's getting to that point that it got to with Pierre Gasly. And I know he got a podium a race ago, but let's remember there were circumstances behind that. But it's getting to the point that it got Pierre Gasly where you can't defend it even anymore. Even though, yes, he does have things working against him, you still can't explain the gap between him and Max. And I would say, honestly, considering that Max does have a lot more support from the Red Bull team, that's clear to see. He should be, half a second, 0.6 off in qualifying. And, on average during the race, he should be about half a second to 0.6 of a second off the pace of Max Verstappen, considering that Max is better. And again, Max does have a lot more support from Red Bull. But, when it gets to a second, 1.2 seconds, how can you defend him anymore? Again, the last race in Mugello, I thought he had a good weekend. I don't think he truly did deserve the podium. I was happy for him, but I don't think he truly deserved the podium at that Grand Prix. And then, you look at Monza, where I know he had damage, but even in qualifying, he was quite, poor. And then Spa, he was kind of fucked over by the team with the tyre selection they went with after the safety car. So Albon was always going to lose that P5 to Ocon because he was on softer tyres. And it just, time and time again this season, you're hoping Albon is really going to have that race where he can consistently, even for just one weekend, live with Max Verstappen enough to show that he deserves truly to be in that team for 2021. But when you look at Gasly and how he has performed this season, and when you also look at the fact that in the first half of 2019, when Albon was teammates with Daniel Kvyat, Daniel was better. He was, and clearly ahead of him in the standings. And Daniel also, this season, I actually think, if you take away qualifying, has been pretty good. So it's getting to that point with Albon where it's becoming hard to defend the pace and the performances. Again, he's not being helped, but he's not helping himself, if you know what I mean. He's not doing the best he can considering the circumstances. Which I think, to be honest, he was kind of doing at the end of last year. I mean, there were certain races where he wasn't that far off and doing pretty well considering he was, only in the car for 3 or 4 races. But at the moment, he's just, completely dead center in the midfield, whilst Max Verstappen is regularly in the top 4 or 5 of races. It's, again, there's hard decisions, I think, to be made for Red Bull. But guys, let me know in the chat, what you thought of Max's race. But also with Albon, what do you think of him this weekend? But what do you think going forward Red Bull need to do? It's a difficult decision because, again, Gasly, if you put him in the car, considering that Max gets so much and basically all of the support from Red Bull, you're not necessarily going to get the Pierre Gasly you're getting at AlphaTauri. So it's a difficult decision. The only thing they can really do, I mean, if they're going to help Alex Albon's performance, is to give him a completely equal car the entire way through next season. Because, they're continuing the way they're supporting Max. They're just exacerbating the problem for Albon. But let me know in the chat what you guys think, and I'll have a look now. Auric Ball, I don't think Pierre Gasly would want to go back to Red Bull in the future. That's the thing. Considering what happened and considering that nothing has really changed from his time, why would he go back? Why would he go back? I don't see why he would. Let's find a couple other comments. Warwick Ball. I think Max Verstappen is too good for Red Bull. I think he actually makes the team look much better than what they actually are. By the way, hello to Nib, Tonka, Brookspurt in the chat, and all the other regulars. Well, I said it last night. Max Verstappen is the reason Red Bull is second in the constructors. If they had Gasly and Albon in the Red Bull, no disrespect to Gasly, but Red Bull would not be second in the constructors. They would probably be right in the middle of that McLaren Racing Point Renault fight for what is now third in the constructors. But because of Max Verstappen, they're going to finish in second place in the constructors, even though I don't think as a team they actually deserve it, because I don't believe they have been the second best team this year. I'd say the second best team has been probably McLaren. But, I mean, as you can see on the constructor standings on the ticker down below, even with Max Verstappen's help, they're not even 100 points clear. But with the way Max has been performing, you'd think Red Bull were 200 points clear. It just shows you how good Max Verstappen has made that car look. The Red Bull of 2020 will go down as a very disappointing car. A car that, well, but I wouldn't say a car, but a year that was looking very promising for Red Bull and Honda, considering 2019 and the way it ended, has just turned out to be a meh kind of year. I mean, yeah, again, Verstappen, he's had so many podiums, and I get that, but, you know, that car is not even... I mean, there's been races where Max has got a podium, and I've honestly thought, like, how has he actually done that when the car has not been anywhere near good enough for it? I mean, look at the Hungarian Grand Prix. They were behind both Mercs, both Racing Points, and both Ferraris even in qualifying. They were very bad in Hungary in qualifying. But Max, in the wet and then in the dry, not only finishes on the podium, he splits the two Mercs, you know, on the podium. I mean, how? Just how does he do that? But again, he is the reason they are where they are. Right, let's find some other comments there. Nib saying, I mean, Gasly said he wants to go back. Maybe this is the thing, is if I was Gasly, and I know this might sound a bit arrogant, but if I was Gasly, I would say, yeah, I'll come back to Red Bull, but only if I'm given completely equal machinery. Not equal driver status, because we know Max Verstappen is better than Pierre Gasly. Let's not kid ourselves. But, you know, considering how it was going at Red Bull towards the end of Gasly's reign and how it's going now with Albon, the only way Gasly can properly survive, or survive enough, for long enough, is if he is given equal machinery completely throughout 2021 and 2022 if he gets into that season, if he does drive for Red Bull. Because if he goes to Red Bull next year and Max has a car that has more parts on it, or better parts on it, the same thing's going to happen. The same thing is going to happen, and it's going to be Groundhog Day for the third year in a row. So they've got to, if they're going to put Gasly back in the car, they've got to stop giving Max just absolutely everything the team has. And remember that at the end of the day, you've got two cars, not one. And if you're ever going to win a Constructors' Championship, you need both cars up there, not just one. Not just one. And also, make a fucking better car. Right. Find a couple final ones. Tonka, has Red Bull got worse, or is it that Mercedes has just risen to another level? The problem, and it's kind of similar to Ferrari in a way, because Red Bull's car aerodynamically has not improved at all on last year. Sorry. On last year. The difference between Red Bull and Ferrari is Ferrari have lost a lot of power that they had last year. Red Bull, the power levels are basically the same. So Red Bull and Honda partnership and the car as a whole is exactly the same or about the same as it was last year. And because Mercedes have gone up another gear, that's why the gap is a lot bigger. If Red Bull had gone up another gear themselves compared to what they were doing last year, then Red Bull would be in a lot better position and would be able, with Max Verstappen, to compete regularly with Mercedes for poles, race wins. Because, I mean, look at what Max has done this year. If he can do what he's doing with this car and be still not that far behind Valtteri Bottas even in the driver's standings, imagine what he could do with a car that was, 4 or 5 tenths of a second quicker than it is in the pecking order now. Max would be able to compete on a regular basis. But because of the, where the car is now, even his best 99% of the time is not good enough still to get even close to winning a race. I mean, I know he won at Silverstone, the second race, but that was an all-time great performance just to do that. So you see what I mean? If Red Bull had gone up another level, and even if they were still just that bit behind Mercedes compared to what they are now, which is clearly behind, then it'd be a lot more game on, at the top. But it isn't, because Red Bull and Honda just haven't improved the car. It's just basically the same car from last year. And aerodynamically doesn't have the stableness and grip that it did at the end of last year, which is why Red Bull ended 2019 so strongly. Right. Let's find another one I can find. Another comment. No, I'm going to move on, I am. I think I've talked long enough about Red Bull. And, yeah, decent result, I guess, considering both cars. Anyway, on to the circus show. That is the Scuderia. But today, actually, Ferrari were quiet. I mean, Leclerc did finish in P6, which is a very good result. And by the way, Charles Leclerc is my driver of the day, because to get that car, the 6th place, ahead of cars that we know are clearly faster, such as Albon in the Red Bull, Ocon in the Renault, even, Gasly and Kvyat in the AlphaTauri. That's a great performance. And yes, he did start in the medium, and that did help. But still, that first stint to get the gap he did to Ocon and Gasly and all of those was a great performance. And for me, he was driver of the day. And Leclerc, yet again in 2020, proving why he is still one of the best drivers on the grid. But unfortunately, his car is absolute dog shit. Sebastian Vettel finished in, 13th place? Lucky for some. Vettel, I guess he helped Leclerc in keeping Ocon back and giving Leclerc the gap to feed into ahead of Esteban Ocon to get 6th place in the Grand Prix. But I feel sorry for Vettel today, because I honestly think Sebastian drove really well today. That's the saddest thing. I thought today he drove really well. In the first stint, his pace was good, considering how old his tyres were and how slow his car is. He did very well to keep Ocon back for as long as he did, and also to stay ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, a lap longer than he probably should have. And yeah, this is what he gets, 13th place. I do feel sorry for him, because that car, you can just see it. It looks so not what he wants in a Formula 1 car, that this is what happens. But yeah, today I thought Sebastian drove well, but he was never going to finish in the points because the car is just so bad. And yes, Leclerc did, do better this weekend, and we get it, but how much of that is Leclerc being favoured over Vettel? And I think that's pretty clear to see now, that Leclerc does have clear favourable treatment over Sebastian Vettel. But yeah, I feel sorry for Vettel today because again, I didn't think he put a foot wrong at all. Um, Maybe if he pitted earlier than he did, maybe he could have nicked a point in the end or got close to nicking a point. But yeah, it's just I do feel sorry for him now because it's just clear that no matter what he does, he's going to get a result that is just completely unsatisfactory, even considering how bad the car is. But yeah, it was for the team relatively. It was quite a quiet Grand Prix. They didn't make any strategy mistakes. There were no pit stop mistakes. A rare sight. I mean, qualifying was a disaster on its own. You know, Vettel crashing and spinning, and Leclerc getting knocked out in P11, and first time they've had both cars knocked out in Q2 at this track. But considering how they normally are on race day, today was actually a quiet day for once. But I do stress, for once, because Ferrari will be back to make us all laugh hysterically at the Nürburgring in a fortnight's time with some just marvelous trick to make them, just fall down the order even more so, rather, in Formula One. But yeah, there's nothing really else to say about Ferrari. Their car's poor. Both drivers did well considering the car's performance. Leclerc did very well and got a vital result for Ferrari in the Constructors, considering they are now in a fight to finish in 6th in the Constructors with AlphaTauri, who are just 15 points behind. So that's their fight between now and the end of the season. And today Leclerc kept them, from getting outscored yet again in a race by AlphaTauri. Because I think the last time Ferrari outscored AlphaTauri in a race was the Spanish Grand Prix before today. So vital points for Leclerc. But I didn't think I'd be saying vital points for Ferrari in maintaining 6th in the Constructors ahead of Red Bull's B team. What an absolutely awful season for the team. But yeah, the Nürburgring, how will that go for them? I think Sebastian Vettel, considering there'll be a home crowd there, and by the way, there is actually going to be a crowd. And I will say, it was great there was a crowd this weekend at the Russian Grand Prix. Whatever you say about the pandemic, I don't care. It's great to see, us being a lot more back to normal than we were, a few months ago. But there will be fans at the Eiffel Grand Prix. That's the official name. To me, it's basically the German Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. So Vettel, if he gets a good home support, which I think he will, considering the way the team has treated him this season, then maybe Sebastian will put in stronger performance. But saying that, if you look at his record at the Nürburgring compared to his teammates, it's not that good. Because the only time he's had races at the Nürburgring, his teammate was Mark Webber, and Vettel, I think, except for the last race at the Nürburgring in 2013, he was always second best in Red Bull, and quite clearly around that track. So hopefully he can, spurred on by the home fans, he can do something. Leclerc, I'm sure, will be very good, but the car, I don't see being good at all. In the first sector, they won't lose too much time because it's not very quick, first sector. But then as the lap goes on, it gets faster. And they'll get slower. So it's going to probably be a similar Grand Prix weekend to what they've had here in Russia. And the only way they can get points is really like today. Very good driving and starting on a different compound and getting in that way. Or maybe there's some rain that, takes away the straight line speed deficit. Because we know, a race in October in Germany, you're asking for rain. So, yeah, I think Nürburgring will probably be a similar Grand Prix if it is dry to what it's been this weekend, which is still, not very good at all. And also, going back to Red Bull when it comes to what they're going to do at the Nürburgring, I think Max Verstappen will be great because the Nürburgring really is a driver's circuit. You do get to see who it really is some of the best drivers in the sport at a track like the Nürburgring. So, we'll see what he can do, and I'm sure he'll be able to somehow be not that far away from pole position, even though the Red Bull car just isn't good enough. But around the Nürburgring, that car I don't see being really good at all. Because their biggest weakness aerodynamically is what? The instability at the rear. And again, in the second half of the lap, you really do need that. And obviously their straight line speed is also down compared to Renault and the Merc powered cars. So we'll see how they get on at the Nürburgring. But yeah, for Ferrari today, best they could do. I don't think you can ask any more of their drivers in the team, considering the car. But the team is responsible for how shit the car is. Let's have a look quickly at what you guys have to say about Ferrari. Nib, I mean, Russia has their vaccine. That's true. That's true. Did I just hear Ferrari's in a fight for sixth? I know, but if you look at it realistically, that is the case. They're only, again, 15 points ahead of AlphaTauri, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 races to go. And if AlphaTauri can, chip away 3 or 4 points a race for the next 4 races, then the tide will have turned. So Ferrari, as bad as it sounds, they've got to keep ahead of AlphaTauri, because that would be the icing on the cake of humiliation this season, I think, is not even being the highest placed Italian team. That would be a very big blow for Ferrari. So, yeah. Again, it sounds bad, but they've got to make sure that doesn't happen, because if it happened, the embarrassment would be incredible. Spider Monkey, do you think AlphaTauri will beat Ferrari? I do, because AlphaTauri have a quicker car. That's clear to see. They've had a quicker car than Ferrari basically all season since probably Silverstone. The first 3 races, AlphaTauri weren't quite up to speed, but then once we got to Silverstone, AlphaTauri were basically at that race where they've been since, which is back end of the top 10. If there's a couple retirements or mishaps for a couple people, then they can get a P8 or a P7, which is what they got today, with, Sainz and Stroll retiring and Norris being down the order. Yeah, AlphaTauri, I think, have had a better car since those 2 races at Silverstone. And they are still, even though today they didn't outscore Ferrari, even though they should have, we'll get onto in a moment why they should have. Yeah, they're still scoring consistently points. I mean, even though Mugello, compared to Monza, they didn't score that many points, but obviously at Monza, they won the fucking Grand Prix. They still scored, 6 points? And they've been doing this for quite a few races now, AlphaTauri, where they've been scoring consistently between 2 and 6 points, except for the anomaly of the Italian Grand Prix. So I think AlphaTauri will do it. I think they'll probably overtake Ferrari in the constructors. Say either Imola or Turkey time. Around those Grand Prix, I think that's where it'll happen. And I don't think Ferrari will reclaim that spot. But yeah, I think Ferrari will finish in P7 in the constructors. I will say as well, can anyone remember a team falling that far down the constructors without a serious new set of regulations from one year to the next? I can't think of any. I mean, you could say McLaren in 2012, but McLaren went from 3rd to 5th, which is only 2 places. Ferrari are likely to go from 2nd to 7th. That's incredible. I mean, the only other things I can think of is maybe Toyota from 2005 to 2006, but we did have the new regulations come in 2006, which got rid of V10s for V8s. Yeah, I can't think of many times where a team has gone from that high in the constructors to that low. There's been plenty of times where teams have gone from that low to, a lot higher, such as Haas F1 from 2017 to 2018, where Haas in 2017 were, I think, 8th in the constructors, and then they went to 5th, which was the last, I think, big example of that. And you could argue McLaren as well in 2019 from 2018, but I think this really is quite unprecedented, like this big of a drop. And we knew Ferrari this season were not really going to be any better, but we didn't think this was going to happen, even after pre-season testing. Yeah, the Iceman in the chat says, and it's true, Ferrari were champions in 1979 and P10 in 1980. Yeah, I mean, that's one, and that is, of course, 1980, their worst season, and I don't think they'll ever match that season in terms of being that shit. But when you look at other examples, I can't think of any other examples of a team dropping that far with the same regulations, basically. It's a very, very rare thing to happen, and it just shows you, as Tonka said in the chat, when you break the rules and when you finally abide by them, the difference, I guess, between, having a legal power unit and having an illegal power unit, which is what they had last year. But, yeah, I think we'll move on from them. But yeah, Ferrari, they're still absolute utter shit, as we all know. But next up is Renault, who could have had a better result today. Because, they got up to 4th and 5th at the start, and it was looking comfortable for the first few laps or so after the safety car came in. But then Sergio Perez really, got his foot down, got past Ricciardo in a great move, I have to say. Then got after Ocon. Ocon then pitted, got held up in traffic, and then Perez, once he pitted, jumped him with the overcut. And then Perez easily beat the two Renaults by almost an entire pit stop ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. But yeah, Renault, considering that, I mean, it could have been better, but I guess you could say they just didn't really have the pace that Racing Point did. But I gotta say, Esteban Ocon, I thought today, really showed why, and I've been saying this for so long, I've never believed the hype with Esteban Ocon. I've never bought into it because, I've seen every, of course, race he has done in Formula One since he joined Manor, then Force India, and, he was there for 2 years, and then he's come to Renault. I've not seen anywhere near enough things from his Formula One career that could suggest that he is up there with Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc or Lando Norris. I just haven't seen it. I think today proved that. He made a great start, great overtake on Daniel Ricciardo to get past him, and then was doing well, maintaining position, then pitted, and then just completely fell apart, really. His pace wasn't strong enough from the moment he went onto the hard tyres. He lacked a lot of decisiveness in overtaking, and that's why he ended up behind Ricciardo and almost losing out to Daniel Kvyat because he couldn't get past Sebastian Vettel. And then once he let Ricciardo through, Ricciardo was past Vettel in 2 laps at most? This shows you the difference between Ricciardo, who I still think is a top F1 driver, and a driver who is a midfield driver, which is what Esteban Ocon is. And there's no, there's nothing wrong with that, being a midfield driver in Formula One. But I think people really do need to stop with the hype I think people, to be honest, have stopped with the hype when it comes to Esteban Ocon, because he's been in Formula One long enough now, and he just hasn't shown, why he deserves any of that hype. He's a good driver, but he's not, he's not going to be winning races and be competing for a world title, really, ever, because he's simply not good enough. His level is like a Lance Stroll, Sergio Perez, and Nico Hulkenberg, which, there's nothing wrong with that. I really like Sergio Perez. I still don't think Ocon is as good as Sergio Perez, but I won't doubt that Ocon is in that bracket with Perez and Hulkenberg and Stroll and Magnussen and Kvyat. But he's not. He is absolutely not in the same bracket as a Daniel Ricciardo, a Charles Leclerc, a Norris, a Sainz. He's not. Or even at this point, a Pierre Gasly. He just isn't. He's a midfield driver. And from now on, I think we've really got to, just look at him and be like, well, P7, P8, most days is really where he should be. And today, he finished in P7 because simply he lacked, again, that decisiveness in overtaking when he had to get past Vettel as soon as possible to stay ahead of Sergio Perez. But he didn't. Perez got ahead, and then Perez easily beat him. And then Ricciardo, for example, came up behind Ocon. And then Ocon had to let him through because Ocon was doing such a poor job at getting past. And by the way Ocon let Ricciardo through was very poor. I don't know if that was the team telling him too late to let him through, or if he decided to let him through at that point. But the way and the position he let him through was awful. It really was. He was almost parked on the apex of turn 2, which is why Ricciardo got a penalty for going, was it the wrong side of the bollard? Because Ricciardo couldn't turn in with full confidence into the apex of turn 2 because Ocon was basically on the apex, almost. That was poor. And then he barely held on the P7 ahead of the AlphaTauri. Yeah, Ocon, honestly, in terms of the way he drove, not good. Not good at all. Daniel Ricciardo, though, another great performance. The first stint wasn't going well for him, getting passed by Verstappen and Ocon on the first lap. And the first stint, he really did struggle on the soft tyres. He was losing a lot of pace to his teammate, to Perez, who passed him, and then Gasly was about to pass him as well before he pitted. But then after he pitted, he was very, very quick. Got the penalty, made up for it very easily, and maintained P5. And Daniel Ricciardo, again, going why he is such a good driver. But you do get the feeling today from Renault that it could have been better, but at least Renault scored the most points out of that 3-team battle for P3 in the Constructors. McLaren today didn't score anything. Racing Point scored 12 points. And Renault scored 16. So, even though it could have been better, at least they still clawed back that ground they gave up earlier in the season where their car was quite poor. So, going into the Nürburgring, to be honest, I think Renault are still looking very strong. I mean, coming to this race in Mugello, I wasn't thinking they were going to be as strong, to be honest, as they were at Spa and Monza. But if you actually look at it, they're about the same as where they were at those races. Renault have, they're in a very good, consistent patch of form. And I don't see why they're not going to carry this through to the race at the Nürburgring. I don't really see, parts of that track where they're going to struggle. The last time we went to that race, Daniel Ricciardo, for example, qualified in P6 ahead of 2 Ferraris and a Toro Rosso. So Daniel is very strong at that circuit. And I remember that weekend for Daniel. He was very, very good that weekend. So I have no doubt Daniel Ricciardo will be 5th or 6th at worst. Ocon, though, who knows? The thing with Ocon, it could be 12th, it could be 7th. You don't know. It really does depend on whether he's absolutely at it, but he wasn't at it today, and it cost his team dearly. But let me see what you guys have to think, or have to say, and what you think. Ricardo's been so consistent. He has. Say Regara Bottas is even a level above. To be honest, yeah, I'd say that as well. Bottas gets his criticism, but in terms of speed, it's not a comparison. Valtteri Bottas is easily faster than Esteban Ocon. Because even though Lewis Hamilton is great, Valtteri Bottas gives Lewis Hamilton a hard time in plenty of qualifying sessions, and we've seen it this year. I mean, Valtteri out-qualified Lewis Hamilton at one of the races at Silverstone, and he did it last year as well. So, again, people do underestimate Valtteri's speed. The problem with Valtteri, which I've always said, is in the race, he just tends to not really kick on. His best part of his weekend is always qualifying. And the only way he can really win a race is if he gets pole position. If he doesn't get pole position, then he does need, like what he had today, things to go his way for him to actually win. Yeah, Ocon, again, he's in that midfield bracket, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But people, and there's plenty of people in the F1 community who love to overhype certain drivers, and Ocon has been one of them. And it needs to stop, because he has clearly shown he's not one of those drivers. Ocon is basically a French version of Nico Hülkenberg, which is why at the end of last year I was saying, why get rid of Ocon when he is basically the same thing as what Nico Hülkenberg is? But Renault made the decision, and of course, his nationality had, of course, nothing to do with it, which is complete bullshit. And yeah, next year I kind of fear for Ocon, because I think he's going to get an absolute hiding from his new teammate Fernando Alonso. Right, let me see if there's other comments here. George Ocon is overrated. Yeah, he is. I've been saying this since I'm trying to think when I started really thinking this. It was like end of 2017, start of 2018. I was thinking, you know what, Ocon, he's good, but he's not what people think he is. Because at the time, there was plenty of talk of, oh, he's going to replace Valtteri Bottas because he's a Mercedes driver. And it never happened. The reason it never happened was because he didn't prove that he was better than Sergio Perez. And he's not better than Sergio Perez. That's pretty clear to see. Over 2 years, Perez was better than him. And if you look at, I mean, I know the cars are different now compared to when they were teammates, but if you look at this season, Perez has clearly, without a doubt, been better than Ocon. Nib, wish Rosberg never left. Yeah, honestly, and I think I did a video on this. I think it was a what if video at the end of last year. What if Nico Rosberg never retired from Formula 1? And I actually think 2017 and 2018, with Ferrari being in there, to actually compete, I think those years would have been so exciting, because what we would have had is a 3-way title fight. Vettel, Rosberg and Hamilton. And Ferrari actually probably would have had a better chance, because Rosberg and Hamilton, with collisions and all of that stuff, would have took points away from each other. And Vettel would have been able to, take what was left, from those two. But since 2017, it's been clear number 1 and clear number 2. At Mercedes, Astro Stevo, Ocon versus Gasly. I say Gasly's better. And I would honestly say Gasly, considering how he's performed this year, that Gasly is in that tier at the moment with Daniel Ricciardo, Norris, Sainz. And, that can easily change based on new information. But at the moment, you have to say Gasly is absolutely on the level of a Ricciardo, a Norris, or a Sainz, but Ocon definitely isn't. Right, I think I'm going to move on to the other Renault-powered team, which is McLaren, who had, and that picture really does describe it, just an absolutely awful day. So Carlos Sainz retired basically straight away, and this time we can't say it's bad luck. It was all his own fault. So on the run down to turn 1, Sainz was right behind Norris, flipped his rear tyre, actually did Carlos Sainz, and then I think went too deep into the turn 2 and 3. Knew he was going to go over the bollard, or go, over the track, so he'd have to go to the far left to rejoin the track where you're supposed to. And he tried to do that, but the problem is Carlos Sainz was probably very pumped up, because, at the start of the race, you're going to be pumped up because you never know what's going to happen. You've got 19 other cars around you, and you're reacting based on your instincts rather than what you actually think is best. And he basically tried to take to that escape road as quickly as possible and completely smashed into the wall and retired instantly. And I said yesterday, Carlos Sainz has been unlucky, but today you can't say that. He caused that himself. Norris had a weird race, honestly. So at the start, he kind of got caught up in that Carlos Sainz crash because he was behind Sainz when he came back on track with his horribly damaged car. Then pitted for hard compound tyres. Then tried to go to the end. And it was working until Albon, got his way up to the back of him. And then Gasly pitted under the virtual safety car. Then he got past him, and then Albon got past him, and there was nothing Norris could do. He tried his best. He tried to eke the tyres out to the end to try and get a point, but simply the tyres went off the cliff, and then he had to pit, and that's why he finished in 15th place. And it's disappointing for McLaren, because I think today, just like they have every weekend, they had a good chance at really building upon the lead they had in the Constructors over Racing Point and Renault coming into the race, but no points scored. That is a big loss for them, because now they're only, as you'll see in a moment on the ticker, they're only 2 points ahead of Racing Point, and not 5 points, 7 points, I think, ahead of Renault. So, yeah, the next couple races are really vital for McLaren. They cannot afford to have another race like this at the Nürburgring or even at Portimao. They've got to bounce back straight away, because if they don't, they're in trouble. You can see there on the ticker. McLaren 106, Racing Point 104, Renault 99. Racing Point and Renault are going to be strong at the Nürburgring. McLaren have got to pull out all the stops and just give it absolutely everything. Because they cannot let the momentum as well swing in Racing Point and Renault's favour. Even though McLaren, they don't have as quick of a car, I don't think, as Racing Point and Renault. McLaren, in terms of their operation, are better. And they need to try, like they've done so many times this season, and score points that maybe they don't deserve to keep where they are in the Constructors. But yeah, today, complete disaster. And at the Nürburgring, in terms of performance, they're probably going to be about the same as they were this weekend. They're going to be around P7 to P10, which is normally where they are in qualifying. And then in the race, it really does depend on retirements of other cars, how they get on at the start and stuff like that. But again, pace should be P7 to P10, maybe P6 at best, or P5. But yeah, Bad day for McLaren, but that's the way it is. Every team has a bad day, and theirs has come here in Russia. Next up, Racing Point. Sergio Perez. I think I do need to give a shout out to Perez because he was very, very good today. Yeah, the car was good. I knew the car was going to be good in the race, considering what he did in qualifying, where he really did exceed expectations, I think, getting onto the second row. And then, after the start, when he lost out to the Renaults, wasn't looking good for him. But then he used the car's pace well, got past Ricciardo with a great overtaking move, and then Esteban Ocon, he closed right up to the back of him. Then Ocon got held up after his pit stop behind Vettel. And then Perez did the overcut and easily pulled away. And again, as I said earlier, ended up pulling out almost a complete pit stop on the two Renaults. So, and he was also, if you actually look at the gaps, and let me get it back up. Look at the gaps. He was only 8 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. And I know Lewis Hamilton pitted, 5 to 10 laps earlier. But that's pretty good to be only 8 seconds off Hamilton and half a minute off the race winner. Again, there are circumstances for that. I understand that. But still, that's pretty good. And I also will say, I didn't think the midfield were too bad today in comparison to the leaders in terms of speed. They actually weren't that slow. They were pretty quick considering how I thought they would be pace-wise compared to, say, Mercedes. They actually weren't too bad. But yeah, Perez, not even that far off a podium. And you can see there, 22 seconds about to Ricciardo, and then easily over half a minute to Leclerc, Ocon, Kvyat, so on and so forth. So yeah, Sergio Perez was great and definitely one of the drivers of the day. As you can see on the screen though, Lance Stroll, his awful weekend came to an end very quickly. Of course, after qualifying, having that issue, he started from P12 or P11, I think it was. And yeah, Lance at the start, he had a very good start actually. I think he was up to P7 or P8, something like that. Getting ahead of the McLarens, of Leclerc and Gasly, who are having a battle. But then, as they came into turn 4, and Stroll was on the outside into turn 4, Stroll pulled to the outside curb, and Leclerc made contact with him, and Stroll went spinning into the wall. Now, if you actually look at the incident, I know Stroll has said that it should have been a penalty, and I completely understand where he's coming from. I get it. I really do. But when you look at the actual clip, it's a racing incident. I mean, it's literally the definition of one. Leclerc couldn't really do anything more. Lance Stroll couldn't really do anything more. Contact was made. That's what happened to Lance Stroll. You can't really give a penalty in that situation. It's not like Leclerc when, all of his brakes locked up into turn 4 and slammed into Stroll and forced him into the wall. Leclerc made the apex just fine, but contact was made because, they were very close on the exit of turn 4. That's what happens in Formula 1 at the start of a race. Contact is made a lot of the time because with how wide these cars are, it's inevitable. There's nothing really Leclerc could do or Stroll could do. That's just the way it was. And he was in the wall, which is a shame for Racing Point because if he did finish, considering that the Sainz incident and Norris, struggling at the start as well, happened before that, Racing Point could be sitting right now in 3rd in the Constructors. But of course they're not, but they are very close to getting it, only 2 points away. And Racing Point, I think at the Nürburgring will be definitely with Perez in the top 5 or 6. Stroll, probably in the top 10, but I don't think he'll be as quick as Perez, honestly. But yeah, I think Racing Point are going to be quick. And if they're going to get that P3 in the Constructors, they've got to have basically the same weekend they've had here at that track. And I think they probably will, considering the speed of the car in the last couple of races. But yeah, Racing Point, good result, I think you have to say. Let me look at the chat quickly. And on what what you guys have to say about Racing Point at McLaren. And Spider Monkey saying he was pushing that old spec car very well. Exactly. Perez, you don't know this, guys. His car is an older specification of that car. I think the only difference is I think Stroll has a new front wing compared to Perez. I think that's it. If there's any more to that, or there's any more new parts, then let me know in the chat or comments after this stream is finished. But I think that's what the difference is. Yeah, great performance. But again, Stroll was a bit unlucky with qualifying and then the race. Frederick, do you think McLaren will be a top 3 team next year? I don't see why not. I mean, they're going to have Mercedes power. So if the differences in power stay the same next year as it is this year, they should be quicker at, say, Monza and Spa and tracks like that. And aerodynamically, the car has been moving along in the last couple of years very nicely. So I don't see why not. And if Red Bull don't improve again, I don't see why they can't go for second in the Constructors. And, having Ricciardo in the team with Lando Norris as a great driver lineup, I don't see why not. I don't see why they can't, again, get closer to Red Bull. I mean, are they going to get closer to Mercedes? Probably not. But Red Bull, if they don't improve again, game on. And it's also game on if, Renault, when they're Alpine next year, they continue improving, and Racing Point, when they become Aston Martin, really do kick on again. And again, if Red Bull don't improve, you really could see a proper fight in the Constructors again, but with Red Bull now mired in it as well. And as well, Red Bull next year can't keep relying on Max Verstappen to bail them out, because that car, it's not good and it's got to improve. Have a quick look at see if there's any other comments on this. Tonka says Stroll has new transmission, new rear suspension and brakes and aero. Okay, so new car basically. Yeah, Perez, great. And we know Perez is a very good driver. I've been banging the drum about Perez for so long. But still, he doesn't get the credit and the chances I think he deserves in Formula 1. But we know how good he is. Yeah, there you go. Racing Point. They were, yes, good today. AlphaTauri next. For AlphaTauri, it was a good race in terms of points scored. But again, kind of like Renault, it could have been better. It really could have been better. So Gasly at one point was up in 8th place, I think. I'm looking quite quick. Then he pitted. And really, the reason Gasly was not able to finish ahead of his teammate or go after Esteban Ocon was because Gasly got held up in traffic. Namely, Kimi Räikkönen. And that cost him a lot of time and hurt his tyres. That's why Gasly couldn't really get after Ocon, when if he had a lot cleaner air, he probably would have got in that fight and probably would have passed Ocon. But then, Gasly, when the virtual safety car came out, and AlphaTauri, by the way, they're very lucky because they thought the virtual safety car for that bollard or the bollards that were pushed over, AlphaTauri thought that was going to stay out a lot longer than it actually did, and they got quite lucky that they didn't lose out, that much compared to the cars behind them. They only came up behind Norris and Albon, and they were still a couple seconds behind. And then, after a lap, Gasly was right behind them, passed them both with 2 great overtaking moves. And then, yeah, finished in P9. And I will say, for Daniel Kvyat at his home race, a great drive. Started on the hard compound tyre from P12, ran very long into the Grand Prix, great first stint, and I knew he was really going to have a great pace at the end of the race, but it's just a shame that he couldn't really use it and get past Esteban Ocon, because if he got past Ocon, who knows? Maybe he could have got close to Daniel Ricciardo, even Charles Leclerc, because he was on softer and fresher tyres. And we saw how much that paid off for Gasly and Albon, you know, towards the end of the Grand Prix. So, great race for Daniel, but it could have been better. It probably could have been P7 at least, but P8 it is. Couldn't pass Ocon in the end. Ocon just was able to be quick enough in the final sector to avoid him having a poor exit onto that main straight for Daniel to get past. But 6 points for AlphaTauri is a pretty good points haul, especially when you compare it to how many points they got from this Grand Prix last year, where they ended up with nothing. But unfortunately, that's 2 points less than Ferrari got. And, you know, considering they are in that fight now for 6th in the Constructors, they've got to look at that and think, well, we need to be getting after them and make sure we get the most points available that we realistically can. And today, it probably could have been 2 or 3 more points, or 2 or 4 more points, rather, than they actually got. But still, decent race. I can't moan too much, but again, like Renault, it could have been better. Now, let's get on to the final 3 teams, and then we'll go through the drivers and constructors standing. So, Alfa Romeo. I think Alfa Romeo actually had a pretty good car today. I mean, Antonio Giovinazzi was P11 and was not too far away, actually, from finishing in the points, and made a great overtaking move on Romain Grosjean, I think. Oh, no, not Romain Grosjean, on Kevin Magnussen towards the end of the Grand Prix, who also, in his Haas, had a great Grand Prix. But can't really complain about Alfa Romeo today. They did the best they could. They were actually pretty quick at times. And yeah, I can't complain. If they had the power, or a bit more power than they've got, you know, at the moment, they may have scored a couple points today. But with the way it is, that's, you know, just the way it is with Alfa Romeo. And yeah, it's a shame for them, but I guess hope the Nürburgring's better, and hope that Kimi Räikkönen can replicate his previous great form from the Nürburgring. Kimi Räikkönen has always been great at that circuit. Last time he raced there, he finished in 2nd place and should have won the race if Lotus weren't such fucking pussies and pitted him. If they left him out to the end of the race, Kimi Räikkönen would have won that race for Lotus. I guarantee you that. And then, what was it, 2007, he got pole position. 2005, he should have won the race if it wasn't for that puncture. 2003, he was going to win the race easily and got pole. 2002, he got a podium. So he is very good around that track. So, you know, if we do have some mixed conditions, don't be surprised if Kimi Räikkönen can get decently into Q2 and not be that far away from the top 10. And then maybe in the race be nicking a point. Don't be surprised at all. You can definitely do it. I am curious, though, to see how Antonio Giovinazzi gets on, because I don't know if he's raced around there. I think he has, but it was a long time ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, if he has. So we'll see how he gets on there. Next is Haas F1, and really the same goes for them. They did actually do pretty well today. Romain Grosjean did finish 2nd from last, but for a long time in the Grand Prix, he was around P11, P12, and doing the best he could with the car. And we know it's a bad car overall. And then, yeah, ended up, you know, bringing out the virtual safety car for hitting the polystyrene bollards, or boards, whatever you want to call them. And then, yeah, he had to pit in the end because he was falling back dramatically. And then for Kevin Magnussen, kind of feel sorry for K-Mag, because I actually think this season he's been pretty good. You know, he scored their only point this season in Hungary, where I thought drove very well. And again, because the car is so poor, he can't show how good he has been this season, and I actually think he's been pretty good. And I thought today he was pretty good. He was P9 in the Grand Prix, And it was in the points for quite a long time before he pitted. And then when he pitted, of course, he was out of the points. And then actually towards the end, he wasn't that far away from the Norris, Albon, Gasly scrap. So I do feel sorry for Magnussen because I thought he drove very well today. And if you put him in a Renault or a McLaren, I think today he was easily scoring points or finishing 5th or 6th. He was that good, but that car is just so hopeless that P11, P12 is a great result, basically, for that team, which is a shame, but there you go. Then finally is Williams, who were basically the slowest team. And again, Williams showing that despite in qualifying probably having not the slowest car, they do have the slowest car in the race, because even though they do have good power levels for qualifying, in the race they just can't look after their tyres and be consistent, and that's why they end up losing to Alfa Romeo and Haas. And also Alfa Romeo and Haas, I think collectively do have a better driver lineup. So yeah, you know, that was the best they could do, unfortunately. Which was what, not 17th, 16th and 18th. I think to be honest, that's the best they could do. So can't really complain about Williams. Hopefully for them it does rain at the Nürburgring, because then I think we will see a very special performance from Mr. Russell. But yeah, there you go. That is the Russian Grand Prix weekend here at Sochi. And in a moment, when the ticker goes round to the drivers and constructors standings, I'm going to quickly read those out and then read out a final few comments, and then we'll be done. Then I'll get on to what the plan is for content going forward. But yeah, as I said earlier, driver of the day, Charles Leclerc, and I thought today the race was a 6 or a 7 out of 10. You may think that's very over the top, but I'm saying that because this racetrack I hate with a passion. So that's why I say that. But anyway, driver standings, Lewis Hamilton still top on 205 points, 44 points clear of Valtteri Bottas, so still comfortable for Lewis Hamilton. Max Verstappen still third, 128. Lando Norris P4, 1 point ahead of Albon, who is 1 point ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in that battle for 4th, 5th and 6th. Charles Leclerc is joint points with Lance Stroll in 7th and 8th place respectively. Sergio Perez is 9th, just a point behind. Gasly P10 on 45 points. Sainz 11th on 41. 12th Ocon on 36. 13th Vettel, who is almost 20 points behind. This shows you how poor of a season it's been. And then Daniel Kvyat on 14 points in 14th place. Kvyat will soon overtake Vettel in the driver standings. Hulkenberg still in 15th. Just shows you how shit the bottom 3 teams have been. And then Raikkonen and Giovinazzi 2 points respectively in 16th and 17th. Magnussen 18th. And then Latifi ahead of Russell, ahead of Grosjean. And then the constructor standings, which I think honestly is the most important part of the rest of the season. If you forget, you know, Lewis Hamilton winning his 7th World Championship. So Mercedes are going to win the constructors. Red Bull are going to finish in 2nd. And then McLaren 3rd on 106 points. Only 2 points clear of Racing Point. And Renault in 5th on 99. So 7 points separating 3rd, 4th and 5th. For me, again, excluding Lewis Hamilton winning the 7th world title, that is the biggest story between now and the end of the season, which I'm looking forward to covering, basically. Ferrari 6th on 74 points, AlphaTauri 7th on 59 points, and then Alfa Romeo in 8th on 4 points. 9th is Haas on 1 point, and last is Williams on 0. So there you go. That's the Russian Grand Prix weekend. And let's have a quick look at Grosjean's got to be dropped. Yeah, absolutely. The Iceman was saying, just saying in the chat there, Kimi has bad luck on German soil. He does, but if you look at his actual performance, we know he's very good at Hockenheim, Nürburgring. You know, he's always been very good at those tracks. But as you say, luck has never really been on his side. Hopefully it is this time. if it does rain, which I think is likely because, again, Nürburgring, middle of October, it just screams rain, to be honest. The Iceman, the fight for P3 is too close to call. It is. Again, 7 points. That I cannot stress how important that fight is. And I think actually for the future of Formula One, it's more important than Lewis Hamilton winning the 7th world title, because in terms of what it will do for their futures of those 3 teams, McLaren, Racing Point and Renault, who are becoming Alpine F1 team next year, you know, the difference in money and all of that from finishing 3rd to 5th, it's so, you know, it can make such a big difference. And it's such a massive thing. That, for me, is what I'm looking out for the rest of the season. Because Lewis Hamilton's going to win the championship. There's no doubt about it. I've already accepted it. And he's already, in my mind, Lewis Hamilton, the greatest driver of all time. So I've already come to terms with that. But this battle, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and as well the battle for 6th between Ferrari and AlphaTauri, that is what I'm really looking at for the rest of the season. Right. Chaz, any podcasts with Nib coming soon? Probably not until the season finishes, to be honest, and that's probably to the earliest. But I will get on to soon. You know, what I'm hoping will be the plan going forward. Astro Stevo, greatest of all time. Big Cool, greatest of this era, no question. Yeah. I do believe that Lewis Hamilton is the greatest of all time because he's not even done yet. I mean, he's this good now, and we've still got next year where the cars are basically the same. I mean, the only difference is what they have to start the season with 10% less downforce. But Mercedes is still going to have the best car, and Lewis Hamilton is still going to win the championship. So Lewis Hamilton will have most race wins, most poles, most title. How can you deny that at the end of the day? Because again, he's not even done yet. He might end up with at least 10 if Mercedes keep up this. So I think you have to say, you know, that he's the greatest of all time. If he was retiring at the end of this year, then I think definitely it's up for debate. But considering he's probably going to go for another 5 years at most, for me, he is the best driver of all time. Quick. Gilbert, nice to have you back on YouTube. Thank you very much. And you know what? I think I'm probably just going to come to an end there because I've been live for an hour and a half and I've, you know, covered everything. So, thank you guys for coming along and watching as well. In the description, I have my contact info, my Discord server. If you want to contact me in any way or join our server with almost 500 people to talk about F1, then join that. And as well, if you want to contact me directly, then try DM me on Discord by joining the server. Or send me an email. The email address is in the description, chazerhdf1@gmail.com. Now, when it comes to content, so I've done these 2 streams and I've enjoyed them. Now the plan is, I said this yesterday, I am working on a recorded video to come out hopefully sometime in October. Now, it's either going to come out in this 2-week break between this race and the Nürburgring race, or it will come out in the next 2-week break between the race at the Nürburgring and the race at Portimao. So, as long as I, you know, keep working on the video and get it done and get it how I like, it should come out, again, hopefully in the next, you know, week and a half. Or if it doesn't come out in the next week and a half, it'll come out around the 20 to 25th of October, you know, in between those 5 days. So look out for that. And when it comes to the Nürburgring race, I'm probably not going to do a qualifying reaction live, like I've done this weekend. But what I'll most likely do is whether the recorded video that I'm working on has been uploaded before the Nürburgring race or not. What I'm probably going to do for that weekend is just do a race reaction live like I've done here. I don't know what time I'll do that. Probably same type of thing, an hour and a half, couple hours after the race finishes, something like that. And then after that, for the other races, I mean, we'll see based on how I feel and, what I want to do, what I feel like I want to do. And as well, when it comes to like podcast episodes, those probably won't come back again until the end of the season, because I don't think I'm quite ready to get back into doing that consistently. But as I heard people talking in the chat, I saw people talking in the chat about Nib coming back on, and I am planning to bring watch-alongs back before the end of the season. And I do have in my mind an idea of what race or what the first race back I want it to be. But it's not going to be for quite a bit of time yet. So if things work out well and, I really want to do it and we get to it and we're going to do it, then I'll do it. But until then, I can't really, confirm anything until I'm absolutely certain myself that it's going to happen, if you know what I mean. But the hope is I will do a watch along before the end of the season. So I guess stay tuned. But in regards to between now and the end of the Eiffel Grand Prix weekend at the Nürburgring, hopefully a recorded video comes out before the race at the Nürburgring, and then I will do a race reaction live after the race. But if that recorded video doesn't come out, I'll still do the race reaction. For that recorded video, if it doesn't come out before the Nürburgring, it'll probably come out a week after the race at the Nürburgring. And then for the races after, I'll decide based on how I feel when we get to that time, essentially. But guys, thank you very, very much for coming along to not only this stream, but yesterday's stream as well. And if you are new to the channel, then don't forget to subscribe down below this video, or go to my homepage, do it there, and also hit the notifications bell, because I will gradually start uploading more again if things go well and I'm not mentally a bad place or physically a bad place or whatever. Then the content slowly but surely between now and December will get more frequent, but it'll be slowly but surely rather than just really quickly. But yeah, thank you guys for coming along. And yeah, I'll see you for the race at the Nürburgring. And actually, yesterday I actually forgot my outro because I haven't done this in so long. My outro, I believe, is it's been me, Nazar HD. Goodbye.